I would love to hurt him and finish him and put him out.
How was he punching? Was it hurting you?
Like a thunder. He punches like a mule kick. Unbelievable. Excuse my French, please. Oh, my God.
It's time!
You're listening to the Cage Nation TV Prizefight Podcast. Coming to you from the Coastal Cameron Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Are you ready?
Here's your host, the big fella, Albert Cameron.
Let's get it on!
Thank you for joining us for the Prizefight Podcast. I'm your host, the big fella, Mr. Albert Miller. And Cage Nation TV, in all of its forms, is breaking ground. We're making history this weekend, July 15th. Lightning Strikes number 4, the premier Southeastern kickboxing event, is happening at the Kerr Scott Building in Raleigh, North Carolina. Card is always subject to change. Always subject to change. Right now, there are 12 fights planned for the card. Fights between Katie Firth and Livia Toledo, Gabe Sorrell and Michael Chandler, and Aaron Shaw takes on Courtney Singleton, all bout planned for the evening. The fighters, and this is really unique, and this is going to be really cool, the fighters are going to be able to choose between the rules that they compete under. And we're going to be talking about that when we come out of the break. Tickets available right now at TriangleKickboxingPromotions.com. Tickets still available. You want to get them right now. This event, I'm not sure how close to selling out it is, but you don't want to risk it. Today on the Prizefight Podcast, we're looking at 3 bouts. We're looking at Georges Kopa versus Evan Daniel. Doug Coltrane takes on Michael Hazzard. And the heavy-handed main event between Eric Belcher and D'Juan Dirty South Owens. This entire fight card really just got me buzzing, like hair standing on end. If you consider the crappy blog I used to write way back in the day, I've been covering and reporting on combat sports for about 10 years now. And this is our first kickboxing event that Cage Nation TV gets to cover. Pure kickboxing. We've done boxing, we've done MMA, we've done MMA and boxing, but this is the first time we get to do kickboxing. And in my 10 years of covering combat sports, I've seen some things. I've identified trends, and I could not be more excited about kickboxing coming to the Kerr Scott Building. We got a lot to talk about today on the Prizefight Podcast. Lightning Strikes 4 from Triangle Kickboxing Promotions happening this weekend, July 15, at the Kerr Scott Building in Raleigh, North Carolina. Don't go nowhere. It's the Prizefight Podcast. Hey everyone, while we're taking a break, we just want to remind you that right now we are looking for new people to join the Cage Nation TV roster of creators. We're looking for creators who have a fight circuit close to home, who have a sincere passion for combat sports, and would like to help us bring new territories to the forefront of our coverage. For more information, visit www.cagenationtv.com/opportunity/pioneer or send us an email at cagenationtv@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Prizefight Podcast. Again, Lightning Strikes number 4. Going down this weekend, July 15th at the Kerr Scott Building in Raleigh, North Carolina. Tickets still available right now at TriangleKickboxingPromotions.com. Do yourselves a favor, friend. Don't do it for me. Do it for you. There are a lot of things that are changing in the country, and I mean that sincerely. I watch this very, very closely. Mixed martial arts is great, and it's always going to be very, very close to my heart. And I firmly believe that MMA, boxing, and kickboxing, I think we can all exist in the same world and that they can all be very successful. I truly believe that. Based on what I'm seeing, based on the trends, kickboxing is on the up and coming. There's a lot that's going on with kickboxing that I really, really like. I like what I'm seeing. I like the competitions coming up. And before I get into breaking down the fights, I'm going to share a story with you guys about kickboxing. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I started watching a lot of Van Damme movies, and one of my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movies of all time is Kickboxer. It's right up there with Bloodsport. And in Kickboxer, Jean-Claude Van Damme's character, Kurt Sloan, has a brother, Eric Sloan, and Eric wins the ISKA championship at the beginning of the movie. And I'm thinking, man, how cool wouldn't that be? To have kickboxing competition, because I wasn't into baseball. I've never really been into football. I don't like golf. Tennis just isn't my thing. Combat sports is where my heart is. It's what I enjoy. It's what brings me happiness. And I'm thinking, man, how cool wouldn't it be to have a kickboxing championship that you could go watch? I'm sure it happens in bigger cities like New York, maybe Las Vegas, Chicago, but I grew up in East Jesus Nowhere. I grew up in this small little town that, the entire town shut down for football, and that's awesome. If that's what you're into, that is awesome. But I'm thinking, hey, what about in my little world, how cool wouldn't it be to have kickboxing? Fast forward about 20 years, and here I am, stoked as all get out that I get to go see championship kickboxing. That's what it is. I I'm going to see the real-life Kurt Sloan somewhere in competition this weekend, and that's really makes me happy. And that really says a lot about the evolution of combat sports. In the preview, I talked about how the fighters are going to get to choose what rules they get to compete under. And that's some pretty revolutionary stuff, if you ask me. In boxing, you're going to fight under certain rules set out by the WBO, the WBA, and there's a name for the boxing rules, and it escapes me at the moment. Oh, I feel bad right now. In MMA, you're going to compete under the unified rules of MMA. This weekend at the Kerr Scott Building in Raleigh, North Carolina, fighters get to choose whether they're going to compete under the rules as set by the North Carolina Boxing North Carolina Boxing Authority, or the International Kickboxing Federation. That small detail changes a lot of things for a lot of people. It's another layer of complexity and strategy that could be going on. And, that's so revolutionary in a very big way, if not being a small detail. That says a lot about how combat sports are evolving and how right now is the greatest time to be a fan of combat sports because it's becoming so accessible, but yet it's still so young that we get to witness firsthand the changes. Imagine being able to sit there and watch Abner Doubleday develop baseball and watch these small changes happen. That is what we get as combat sports to make this happen. So that made me very excited. Today on the Prizefight podcast, if I'm not talking about a fight or fighter, it's not because I don't think that they're not worth talking about. It's that I don't know enough about a particular fighter or fighter to justifiably report on it. And I'm not going to lie, this is some real pioneer stuff I got myself involved into today. When I'm looking up fights and fighters, I usually have a set number of places I can go to try to pull up statistics, try to pull up numbers. For MMA reporting, it's usually mixedmartialarts.com. SureDog will get me the quick stats. For boxing, it's boxrec.com. No resource exists like that for kickboxing. Not yet, anyway. And if you're a web developer and you want a good idea, there you go. Start a kickboxing database. So I had to go to a couple different places to try to pull up some stats. And I haven't had to work that hard in a while. And I felt like a young guy again. I felt like I was in my early 20s. I was hungry, going out there just devouring every bit of information. And that's another thing that just made me so excited about this event this weekend. As that these kind of awesome things are happening, and I get to be a part of it. First fight I want to talk about right out the gate. The main event of Lightning Strikes number 4, D'Juan Dirty South Owens is going to be taking on Eric Belcher. First time I saw D'Juan Owens down south, it was like seeing an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. I've called fights for D'Juan Owens. I've seen him fight in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where I'm from. And to see him down south, it was like, okay, this is where, it was like a sign, man. Combat sports is ready for me down here. I'm ready for it. Owens and Belcher are both Lightning Strikes veterans, and they're going to be returning in the main event, looking to get that ever-important main event victory. Eric Belcher is absolutely no stranger to Southern combat sports. He's an active MMA fighter. He does have combat experience, but specifically, he has Lightning Strikes experience. I don't have a whole lot to go off of here. I've got information about Lightning Strikes. I've got information about MMA and boxing, but I have no way to reconcile them both. And the most important way that I'm going to be able to fix that is I'm going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina this weekend for Lightning Strikes. In the classic case of iron sharpening iron, Eric Belcher has submission victories in MMA, but he's looking to broaden his horizons and skills by competing in kickboxing. You need striking experience? What do? You go out there and strike. Submissions, takedowns, all those things are no longer available to Eric Belcher. He cannot rely on that. So now, it's trial by fire. It's immersion therapy. Eric Belcher is getting in there, and he's competing with one of the most experienced guy in regional MMA, especially Southern MMA, in D'Juan Owens. Now, in his pro combat experience, Belcher won the last of his series with William Webb, and he has a submission victory over Kane Tomlinson. And his victories are coming by submission. And again, it's immersion. It's trial by fire. Eric Belcher is a fantastic athlete. Do not get it twisted. Eric Belcher is a competitor. And probably more important than talent is the eagerness to fight, the desire to get in there and fight. Eric Belcher is going right for the top in Lightning Strikes. There is no doubt in my mind that Lightning Strikes is going to keep promoting. Are they going to come to Wilmington? Maybe Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Are they going to go to Charlotte? Yes. What I'm seeing, everything is pointing towards greater and greater successes. So Eric Belcher knows that he needs to get on this train now. And he's going right for the top. And he drew a very, very tough opponent for the main event. So what's going to happen is Eric Belcher is going to be pushed out of his shell. He can't rely on submissions. And whenever a man is forced to do that, especially in the heat of combat, he discovers things about himself. And everyone in attendance is going to be surprised by what he has to dig deep in and what he has to find. Now, D'Juan Owens is coming into this fight as one of the most well-rounded warriors who fights in North Carolina, and I mean that. I'm watching D'Juan Owens fight Marquise Daniels at the Kerr Scott Building in Raleigh, North Carolina. And D'Juan Owens gets tagged in the mouth. And I've been punched in the face once or twice. It did not feel good. D'Juan Owens takes this shot right in the mouth. And he looks at the guy, and I'll never forget the look in his eyes. It was like killer instinct. D'Juan Owens looked at him. He's like, okay, come on. I took one. Come on. I want another one. And that state of mind, like that actual Zen state of mind, whether it be adrenaline, whether it be state of mind, is absolutely incredible. And that's what I think it draws to a lot of us to watch competitive prize fighting. It's that state of mind you get in. D'Juan Owens is one of the nicest guys I think I've ever met. Eric Belcher is a real nice guy too. D'Juan Owens is teaching self-defense in other countries. And he's empowering young kids to not get bullied. And he is just an all-around good guy. And then he gets tagged in the mouth. And he has the killer instinct show through. It's that incredible transformation. Talking about that a lot. D'Juan Owens, easily one of the most well-rounded fighters. Owens is also incredibly well-versed with his hands. Myron Baker, Ron Weathers, Diego Wilson, all stopped by D'Juan Owens' strikes. D'Juan Owens is known for a couple things. He can strike. He's also got submission victories, but grappling doesn't do you any good in a kickboxing fight. And we've already identified that there's an X factor. Eric Belcher is going to be forced to tap into resources in himself. Eric Belcher has to tap into talents that he might not have known he had. And that's an X factor. You can't plan for that. You cannot plan for spot evolution. I'd be willing to bet a couple shekels that the Eric Belcher that walks into the Lightning Strikes cage is not going to be the same Eric Belcher that walks out, win or lose. You can't plan for that. Now, perhaps more impressive than his striking and his submission ability, D'Juan Owens has this ability to ration his cardio. He paces himself incredibly well. It's an exact science. And D'Juan Owens can go the distance and win consistently. Think about that. You're watching The Ultimate Fighter. You're watching, pro boxing. And whenever someone loses by decision, they always say the same thing. You can't let it go to the judges' hands. You can't let the judges decide. D'Juan Owens takes tough fights, regularly tough fights. And he regularly, consistently, goes to the judges. And more often than not, the judges look at that fight and say, D'Juan won. That was his fight. I'm not trying to talk about D'Juan Owens' powers of persuasion. I'm talking about D'Juan Owens' ability to let a fight go into later rounds, to let it go the distance, and still be impressive in the last round. When you think about judging, and it took someone who was involved in a state athletic commission, if you think about what a fight is, a fight can be, 5 rounds, 3 rounds, 12 rounds, in 3-minute increments. And yes, it's one whole fight, but a round is a miniature fight. So, you got Steve and Dave. Steve knocks the crap out of Dave for the first round. That round's done. Second round, Dave knocks the crap out of Steve. Regardless of what happened in that first round, Dave still won that little miniature fight. And that's how each round goes. So if Steve won 2 miniature fights as opposed to Dave's one, Steve won the fight as a whole. It's the battle versus the war kind of thing. D'Juan Owens is consistent at winning these mini wars winning these mini battles to win the greater war. D'Juan Owens does have winning kickboxing momentum going his way. The last time Lightning Strikes came to promote a town, it was Lightning Strikes 3 back in February. And D'Juan Owens scored a decision victory over Trey Singleton. That's exactly what I've been saying. Eric Belcher is no slouch. Eric Belcher is a man who goes in, who throws leather, and he's good at it. D'Juan Owens is a man who goes in to throw leather, and he's good at it. It comes down to the old adage that styles make fights. And I like this. I like these styles and this fight coming together. There's a lot that I think I'm missing on this. I think I got the idea, but I have no way of gauging their kickboxing prowess based on the numbers. I can only go by context clues from other combat experience, but I like what I'm seeing. In the main event of Lightning Strikes 4, D'Juan Owens, Eric Belcher have got some stuff to prove. Eric Belcher wants to get winning momentum his way. D'Juan Owens wants to keep winning momentum going his way. Let's talk about the keys to victory for Belcher. D'Juan Owens is a very patient man. he will take a fight to the distance, and he does it regularly. So Eric Belcher needs to remain focused and not let frustration get the best of him. D'Juan Owens is a human chess player. Eric Belcher needs to be ready to combat that on a mental level. Yeah, the fight's going into the second, third round. It's not going his way. He needs to not get frustrated. He just needs to keep going with strategy. Eric Belcher also needs to rely on fundamentals and technique. D'Juan Owens is not the man that you want to experiment new angles and techniques with. It's not going to benefit you. It's not. Eric Belcher needs to be mentally prepared to go the distance. Consistently, the numbers, the context clues. D'Juan Owens is more than comfortable taking you to the later rounds and beating you there when you're tired in the last round. When you've given everything you had in the round before, D'Juan Owens is going to capitalize on that. And Eric Belcher, I think, is a man who can prepare for that. This fight is not over. It's still, in my book, it's competitive. It is 50-50. Eric Belcher, D'Juan Owens both have an equal shot. Eric Belcher needs to be mentally prepared to go the distance and fight a long-term fight consistently. Keys to victory for D'Juan Owens. Confidence is king. D'Juan Owens has been to the lightning strike swing before. He's been victorious. He has been there before. Owens needs to trust the perspective of his corner and be prepared to stick to the Iceman game. We talked about that Eric Belcher is going to dig into some stuff that he didn't know, he might not have known he had. And when you're dealing with an X factor, when you're dealing with an intangible like that, when you're dealing with something you cannot prepare for, you need to trust the guys behind you. Because there's a different perspective. If I'm in, and me and Rob Lynn, we're throwing hands at each other, but I've got Mickey from Rocky in my corner. Mickey's seeing something that I'm not. Because I'm in the heat of the moment. He has a little bit of a chance to kind of sit back. Mickey's seeing things that I'm not seeing. Trust your corner with perspective. Absolutely trust that. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop doing that, I think would be the best way to put that. Now, allowing Belcher to present the opportunity to score with strikes. He needs to... Eric Belcher is going to... said that Eric Belcher needs to stick to fundamentals. D'Juan Owens has been very good at finding opportunities in guys' strategy. He needs to be relying and do that. He also needs to trust the power in his hands to either score points or score the finish. No one wins a fight by circling each other. You have to aggressively and actively engage your opponent. Look for those opportunities. Score with strikes. Hit combinations. Go for uppercuts. Look for that knockout. Have in your mind, you're ready to go the distance. I could not be more excited for this. Oh Lord, I'm rambling. I could not be more excited about this main event. One, because I've seen D'Juan Owens fight before. I know what he's capable of. I don't know what Eric Belcher is going to pull out, and that is very exciting. A submission guy who's confident enough to take on a seasoned striker has something up his sleeve, and I cannot wait to see what that is. Lightning Strikes number 4 going down at the Kerr Scott Building. Tickets available right now at TriangleKickboxingPromotions.com. Throughout the Prizefight podcast, I'm going to be giving you plenty of reasons why you need to be in attendance at the Kerr Scott Building. Don't do it for me, boys and girls. Do it for you. Do it for you. Because everything I'm talking about is a fraction of what's going on. There's 12 fights. I'm talking about a fourth of them. There's still 3/4 of the fight card that could completely blow your minds and exceed expectations. In the co-main event, Doug Cold Red Coltrane is going to be taking on Michael Hazzard. Doug Coltrane is also an accomplished combat sports veteran. The last time Doug Coltrane was in the Kerr Scott Building was a bout with Ali the Red Scorpion. It was a loss, but it was a loss that was overturned due to a groin foul. And I was told about this by someone who's close to Coltrane, and I'm very glad he did. I had a very good seat cage side, and the action was happening at the opposite of the cage, so I thought I had a great perspective. People in Coltrane's camp was like, hey, no. There was a groin foul. Albert didn't see it. That fight was overturned. And for that makes me feel good that the North Carolina Boxing Authority will be willing to listen to appeals like that. That's good. I mean, it shows that they care. Now, Doug Coltrane is a fantastic athlete. He has skills in a few different disciplines. Obviously, he's a good striker. He's got submission skill. In fighting context, Doug Coltrane has stopping power in his hands. When I say stopping power, especially in the context of striking, that means Doug Coltrane, with his own will, volition, and body mechanics, got the referee to intervene and say his opponent was no longer qualified to continue fighting. That's exactly what that means. There's no two ways about it. Doug Coltrane has been so overwhelming with his skill, his ability, and the damage he's inflicted that the referee said that's enough. A more pure victory you will find not. In addition to the power in his hands, he has a good base for defensive maneuvers. When he fought Ali the Red Scorpion, he was in there and he was competitive. I mean, a groin foul is the great equalizer. Make no bones about it. But up until then, Doug Coltrane looked good. He looked fluid. He had good hands. He had good foot movement. He looked like he was ready to fight. He looked like he was ready to win. Doug Coltrane also has title fight victories. And you think about that. A title fight victory, Doug Coltrane is able to shoulder the pressure of whatever combat sport's going to bring him. And that makes for a very, very good competitor. Doug Coltrane, victorious in his last Lightning Strikes bout, he scored a decision victory over Harold Hubbard. I just told you some details that really paint a picture here. I'm telling you about a man who has stopping power, who has the ability to end a fight. We all sit down and watch a fight. We're ready to go the distance. That's what we're prepared for. And in an instant, the referee says, okay, this fight's over. It's done. A decision victory says this man was able to go the distance to score enough points to inflict enough damage that he won the fight in the judges' minds. 3 men or women all agree Doug Coltrane did enough. He looked active enough. He looked aggressive enough. He won that fight. Now, Michael Hazzard is going to be making his Lightning Strikes debut. Hazzard fighting out of South Carolina. He does have professional amateur combat experience. He competed in MMA. In his 2 pro bouts in mixed martial arts, Michael Hazzard stopped Walker Vivian and Warren Smith in the 2nd and 3rd rounds respectively. Stopping a fight that late in the round tells a great deal about cardio and stamina. To still have stopping power that late into a fight. So, how many times haven't we seen a fight where people come out guns a-blazing in the first round? They look good for that first round. But in the second round, their mouthpiece is out, they're sucking air. They've really blown their gas tank. Michael Hazzard paces himself. He rations his cardio. I just got done saying the same thing about D'Juan Owens. Michael Hazzard, able to stop a fight early in the 2nd, late in the 3rd. That tells a great deal about his energy budgeting. Well, yeah, we'll call it that. He's able to budget his energy to the point where he can take a fight late into the round and still put the stamp on someone. Styles make fights. Doug Coltrane is a man with stopping power who can go the distance. Michael Hazzard is a man with stopping power who can go the distance. When it comes down to great prize fights, there's a couple things you can do to make a fight really exciting. Grudge fights, title fights. But probably more exciting is an unknown, dead-even match. Doug Coltrane, great athlete who can stop someone. Michael Hazzard, great athlete that can stop someone. Boys and girls, we got a fist fight in Raleigh, North Carolina. Let's talk about the keys to victory for Doug Coltrane. Cardio is going to be a must against someone with late-stage stopping power like Michael Hazzard. You do not go in sucking wind against someone who can stop you in the early 2nd, late 3rd. Budgeting your stamina, energy conservation, pacing yourself. That's going to be paramount. It might even come down to whose cardio is better. Doug Coltrane needs to trust his hands and be confident in his skills. He needs to make good strategy judgments on the fly. So, he's in there. Michael Hazzard's giving him a hard time. He needs to be able to adjust. The corner says, hey, Doug, he's doing this, or he's doing X, Y, or Z. He needs to be able to listen to his corner and make adjustments on X, Y, and Z and remain competitive. Coltrane's also going to benefit from, like I said, trusting his corner and making adjustments where they recommend. Keys to victory for Michael Hazzard: he needs to be prepared to fight a man who has something to prove. Nothing about that fight with Ali the Red Scorpion could have possibly sat well with Doug Coltrane. In that building. He is fighting in the same building where that bout with Ali the Red Scorpion went down. That makes a very dangerous competitive. He has something to prove, if not to everyone in attendance, and certainly to himself. In Doug Coltrane's mind, and according to the people who are close to him, he knows he could have beaten Ali the Red Scorpion. And there's no doubt in my mind there's a rematch coming down somewhere down the pipe. But right now, he needs to get that out of his system. He needs to prove that. That motivation makes someone very hard to fight. Michael Hazzard needs to keep up with his conditioning. I talked about, late stage stopping power. He certainly wants to cultivate that, make sure that that is primed. Michael Hazzard needs to look for opportunities to score knockouts while not sacrificing position to win. You guys remember the movie Batman Begins? Whenever Christian Bale's fighting Liam Neeson, he's like, oh man, I got you. And he sacrificed footing for a kill stroke. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Don't go swinging for uppercuts and combos if you're going to leave yourself open for good counter-striking. If Doug Coltrane proves that he's a good counter-striker, you don't want to go swinging for the fences like that. You want to implement strategy, maybe tire him out, because you do have late-stage stopping power. Whew. Again, this is the kind of stuff I'm figuring out as I'm digging into this. Like, I had to go to a couple different places, and I felt like I was in my early 20s again. And that makes me very excited. It's going to be my first kickboxing match I go see live. I've seen it on TV. I've seen it on UFC Fight Pass. But this is live and accessible. It's right there for us. Combat sports, in all forms, are so reachable, so accessible. So that's why I encourage you guys to go see things. I've covered fights with guys who've gone into the bigger stage. I've had conversations with Bellator's Dominic, the Honey Badger Mazada, with the UFC's Chris Dempsey. I talked to Cody No Love Garbrandt after his fight with Mazada in Pittsburgh. These people are real. They're accessible. You just got to go watch them fight before they make it to the big stage. These guys are hungry. They're willing to do the work. So by being in attendance for Lightning Strikes 4 at the Kerr Scott Building, you're doing yourself a favor and you're investing in someone's future before they can prove the dividends. Closing out the Prizefight podcast, Georges Kopa will be taking on Evan Daniel. Now, not a whole lot of information available to me on Kopa's combat sports experience. I've heard things say that he's an MMA fighter who wants to go to the UFC, and that is awesome. I know that he has Lightning Strikes experience. He was able to get a decision victory over John Prim at Lightning Strikes 3, and now I watched that bout on YouTube between Kopa and Prim, and Kopa had good head and hand movement. Like, his head and hand coordination was excellent. His fluid foot movement. He looked quick. He looked responsive. He had that spring in his step. If this is the same Georges Kopa that I think it is, he's a West African fighter looking to take it straight to the combat sports world, and that kind of motivation goes a very long way. I'm a very firm believer in positive thinking. I think that if you see it for yourself, if you're able to manifest it for yourself, that's taking you somewhere. And I think Georges Kopa's got that. Evan Daniel, starting out his combat sports career, but he's competing in excellent fights. He's trying to immerse himself. Daniel is a Lightning Strikes veteran, having a second-round TKO victory over Josh Collins. Last time I saw Evan Daniel fight, he was in an MMA fight with Elias Briley. And that was a great back-and-forth fight. It really was. Daniel and Briley both brought the best out in each other. What happened was, Evan Daniel displayed. He put it out there. He was communicating that he was an adept striker and he was a comfortable kickboxer. So whenever we're coming to a striking-only kind, I can't tell you that Daniel and Briley ever went to the mat. And if it did, it got stood up real quickly. Evan Daniel is a young athlete who's looking to compete. Super excited about where this kid's going. Let's talk about the keys to victory for Kopa. The element of surprise is on Kopa's side. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm not saying that I'm anything special. But if I couldn't find a lot on him, there isn't a lot for Evan Daniel to find to prepare. So whatever Georges Kopa's got up his sleeve, it's going to be hard for a lot of people to find. There's, I think, one fight in kickboxing rules that Evan Daniel might be able to rely on. And I can't imagine that Georges Kopa sitting on that one victory. So he's evolving, he's progressing, he's growing, and he's doing it in the shadows. And that works out well for him. Because there's going to be a lot that he's going to be able to do that Evan Daniel can't prepare for. Obviously, stick to the fundamentals. Keep up with that head and hand coordination. Keep up with the good foot movement. Be ready to go the distance. Be ready to just take the fight to someone who can't really prepare for you. The key is to victory for Evan Daniel. Be ready for anything because Kopa is a wild card in this bout who does not have documented tendencies to count on. You can't say, oh, he prefers a right hook uppercut combination. You can't say that because you can't find it. Unless Daniel's trainer knows something I didn't. Which is entirely possible. I am nothing special, ladies and gentlemen. I just know where to start looking. With fighting someone who's a wild card like Georges Kopa, you need to make adjustment when your corner tells you without question. Let me put emphasis on that last part. Without question. There's a perspective that they're going to be able to see. And if they're your trainer, they know something a little bit more about the combat sports than you might. In the heat of battle, you think you know what's going to be happening. Your corner is going to see something different. So let's rely on what your corner is telling you, and let's do it without question. Lastly, I'm thinking look for opportunities to let your strikes fly. Be confident in what you're throwing. You cannot be timid. As unprepared as Evan Daniel might be for Georges Kopa, Evan Daniel might have surprises for Georges Kopa as well. When he fought Elias Briley, he was very confident in strikes. He needs to keep up with that. He needs to be ready to throw hands. He needs to be able to throw knees. If he's allowed to throw knees. I think that might have actually gotten him or Elias Briley in some trouble when they fought. They were throwing knees when they shouldn't be. Be ready to fight within the rules. Regardless of what I believe, it behooves you to be in Raleigh, North Carolina this weekend. Tickets still available at TriangleKickboxingPromotions.com. Don't wait for the door. Just don't wait. Get your tickets now. Just get your tickets now. You know, you never know if this fight's going to sell out. I've given you plenty of reasons why this fight should sell out. So don't wait. Head on over to TriangleKickboxingPromotions.com. Get your tickets. This immense card going down July 15th. Bell time is at 7. Doors open at 6. Card is always subject to change. So everything I'm telling you guys might not be the case come Saturday, but likely it is. In the world of prize fighting, it is changing before our eyes, friends. New things are coming up all the time. You don't want to miss this contest. It's changing the Southeast. Kickboxing as a whole is changing the landscape of martial arts, of prize fighting all over the world. Next week on the Prize Fight Podcast, the countdown to Scorchin' Boxing's Fight Night is on, boys and girls. We're talking about the debut of Altoona Combat Sports legacy Joey Dignan. We're telling you everything you need to know for prize fighting's triumphant return to Altoona, Pennsylvania. Tune in next week. We'll tell you all about it. Until next time, I'll see you guys in Raleigh for Fights, Cameron, Action.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cage Nation Prize Fight Podcast. All rights reserved. 2016 to 2017 Planet Aries Sports. The Prize Fight Podcast is part of the Cage Nation Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.cagenationtv.com.